Hi everyone, my name's Emma and this is Emma Rosen Books, and today it is cold. So I'm kind of cuddling my hot coffee because it's chucking it down with rain. I mean, are we done with summer? Is that just, hate it. Anyway, I thought I'd come on here and talk about my experience of being on local radio, because it's something I didn't talk about at the time. So I went on 3 different radio stations when I was promoting Milk when that came out last October. I went on Deal Radio and Dover Radio and also Cabin FM, which is based in Herne Bay. And yeah, I didn't talk about the experience, and I thought it would be really good to share with you a little bit about kind of how it works being interviewed on local radio and, you know, tips and tricks and that kind of thing. So, I really like local radio because in general it's a volunteer run thing, as far as I understand it. I'm not an expert, but just based on what I found out when I went along. That it's either run by, I guess, enthusiasts, people who really enjoy radio, so presenting, or I guess like the technical side of things, or by people who maybe used to be radio presenters on national shows and now support community radio. That's the impression I got anyway, and that it's run through fundraising and grants and, you know, community grants and that kind of thing. I think that local radio is one of those things that maybe could do with more support, because there's people who give up their time, they don't get paid for it, and just because they want to do it and they enjoy it, and they work with local businesses and local community groups, and it's a really community minded thing in my opinion, and I think it's great to sort of be part of it and support it, and they support you and you get this whole two-way brilliant thing. I love any of that kind of community stuff. You know, working with local organisations and all of that kind of thing, and just helping to promote each other and all of that. It's great. So the different radio stations I went to worked on, each one worked on a slightly different basis. One that I went to, I did a pre-recorded interview. So that's helpful if you may be a little bit anxious about being live, because obviously making these videos, for instance, in fact this is about my 3rd take of making this video so far, but I can re-record it and I can edit it, and so you're not so worried about what you're going to say, or if you stumble over your words, or any of that kind of stuff. So it takes away all of that worry, or you know, you maybe aren't comfortable being interviewed. You know, it's not for everybody, I guess. So it may well be that that's a really nice way of doing it. And it depends on how your local radio works as to whether that's what they do, but if they do, then that might be a really nice way of doing it, and I really enjoyed that experience with that particular radio station. In fact, my first experience, because actually I've been on local radio before for other things that I do in my life, so that was something that I'd experienced before and was my first experience of radio, which is, I think it's quite a nice way of doing it. So that was for Dover Radio. When I went on Cabin FM, that one was, I went along to a particular show and I was interviewed by their presenter. So I'd set up beforehand I was going to be interviewed by this particular person, and I went along at the allotted time and was interviewed. And, you know, that was different obviously because it's live and anything could happen, and again, what if you stumble over your words, what if you say the wrong thing, what if you know, sound like a fool, or, you know, so personally, I don't have that much of a problem with that kind of thing, but I was more nervous about doing the live ones that I did. But yeah, so there's that one. You may go to a particular show. Deal Radio has a community drop-in session. So that one's really cool because actually you don't even have to organise it. You can turn up at this particular time, and the nice thing as well is that you run into other people who are going along there to be interviewed, so you just go in during the community drop-in and then they make a bit of time for you to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So that's quite nice because I got to meet other people, and it just sort of had a community feel to it, which, as I said, is what I quite like about local radio. And then each of those radio shows then sent me links of what they'd recorded, and then obviously I can publicise it and they can publicise it and all the stuff, so that's really great. You know, they can link up to my stuff, and yeah, it's really good. The other thing to bear in mind is that different radios will broadcast in different ways, and I can't remember with the radio stations that I was on exactly how each one broadcast, but some radio stations will have an FM licence, which means that most people can pick up. For instance, my car, I don't have a DAB thing, so I can only pick up radio stations that broadcast on FM. But that's quite expensive for a radio to get to get like a transmitter. I think that's how it works. So an awful lot of them won't have that. But if they do, then that ought to mean that they get a reasonable listenership in the area that, you know, local people would, quite a lot of local people do tune into local radio stations. Alternatively, they might be on DAB, or they may be internet only. So obviously if they're DAB, then again you get a certain listenership depending on who has devices that can tune into that. And if they're internet only, then again that affects things because you can only play that on certain devices. Obviously what you do find with ones that have the internet side of things is that they have listenership abroad, and they have people who listen to their radio stations for whatever reason, just enjoy their shows, or maybe know the presenter or whatever it might be. So personally I was quite happy to support whatever their listenership was. I just wanted to be a part of the that community thing. But it may be that for you want to look into how they broadcast, you know, who's going to be able to listen to the show. Is it just going to be local people? Is it going to be people all over the world? Is it limited by particular devices? Because of course they might have FM and internet. But you could also ask them what their listenership is like. Obviously it's going to be varied, but they should have some idea of what their typical audience is, if that's something that you're interested in. But the great thing is, of course, as long as it's something where they can link to it, so they've got some kind of internet radio, what's the word, like replaying thing. I'm doing really well with the words. Do you see? It's going well. How many times in these videos can I not speak? But if they've got that kind of, listen again, that's what I'm looking for, then that's really handy for you, because you can put that on your social media, your website, whatever it is, so that then people can listen to those interviews again if they didn't catch it live, which generally people probably won't catch it live. Of course you can do the thing on your social media of like, listen now, I'm going to be on in 10 minutes and all that kind of thing to get people to support you. The next thing to say is that for some local radio stations, because they're volunteer run and so forth, often they have periods of time that aren't covered by presenters. So maybe at night, maybe at the weekends, maybe if they just can't fill a particular slot. And you may find that at certain times they replay shows, and so your interview gets played again, which is kind of cool. So I know that I was played more than once on some of the interviews that I did. So that's handy as well. You get that extra added listenership, which might be at a different time, you know, different people tuning in. It's really great. So, from my point of view, like I said, it's a really good thing to be involved in and supportive of. And you can find out in advance a little bit of information, if you wish to, about how they're going to interview you. So is it going to be pre-recorded? Is it going to be live? Is it going to be a set time? Is it going to be advertised beforehand that you're going to be on, or are they just simply going to mention it at the beginning of the show? Like, what is the deal? You can ask all of those kind of questions, and you know, how is it transmitted? How can people tune in? When is it going to be transmitted? If it's something that's pre-recorded, when is it going to be played? When can you tell your audience to watch it? Who listens to it? What's the audience like? So you can get all of that kind of information. People from local radio, in my experience, are really lovely and really want to have people from, you know, all different walks of life and businesses and what have you to come in, and so that, you know, they've got people to interact with and to talk about and topics to cover and all of that. So I think that they're going to be really positive to somebody coming in and being willing to talk about what they're doing. Certainly was my experience anyway. So tips. So once you're actually in there, I think if you are feeling anxious, that it is worthwhile to say to the person who is interviewing you that you are feeling uneasy about it, because they're going to be people who've interviewed people before, and they're going to be able to put you at ease, talk to you about, you know, what's going to be expected of you and what's going to happen. And if you're really worried about it, of course you can ask for what the questions might be beforehand, and then you can prepare for them. Personally, I was quite happy just to turn up and just talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. But, you know, it depends how you feel. But if you are feeling nervous about it, then I think tell them, and maybe they'll go easy on you. I would send them information before you go about who you are and what you do, so that they can do a little bit of research. Send them your social media and your website and your, you know, your book on Amazon or whatever it is. Send them all the stuff. If you're going about your book, I found it really helpful to take the book in. They leafed through it and read parts of my book out, which was awesome. It meant that they could talk about what the cover looked like and how the book felt and all of that stuff. I have promotional bookmarks, and I took a couple of those in to leave with them to remind them of me. But, you know, give them some stuff so that they can prepare beforehand, and if you want information so that you can prepare beforehand, then you can ask for that, to ask for, you know, what are typical questions that they might ask and that kind of thing. Then I would suggest prepare a little bit. So for me, I had to brush up on my stats because my book is about breastfeeding, and it was helpful to be able to talk about the statistics of rates of breastfeeding, because that gives a lot of context to what I'm talking about. But I tend to sort of just forget those numbers off the top of my head, so for me it was useful to look through that. Anything else that I think I might be asked about that I wanted to brush up on, just any fact kind of stuff. But also it can be helpful to sit down with a pad and paper and think through, well, what if they asked me this and what would I say? Or of course if they've told you what they're going to ask you, then you can do it that way. But you know, what if they asked me a question about why did I write my book? Or what if they asked me how do I get a book published? Or, you know, all that kind of thing. Think about what would you say and imagine it, or try it. Sit on your own and talk to yourself. Personally, as somebody who sits here talking to a camera, I don't mind sitting and talking to myself. In your car can be a great way of doing that. Interview yourself. Why not? How many of you had like tape decks where you could record yourself and you made radio shows? Because I sure as hell did. In fact, I had one that had 2 tape decks, so you could put a tape in one and record the music, so you could cue up music and put that in. Yeah, it's cool. Shout out to my various co-hosts on my radio show over the years. Anyway, but yeah, you know, sit and interview yourself, or get somebody to interview you. Say to somebody, right, you know, ask me these questions if they've prepared some, or ask me some questions about my book and see how you feel and see how you are saying things off the cuff. Like I said, personally, I didn't prepare that much because I'm quite comfortable and confident about, like I said, just talking. So I personally didn't feel that I needed to do that kind of thing, but you know, if you need to, then do that if that'll make you feel more confident. You might want to listen to those radio shows before you go on them, so that you can hear the presenters, get a feel for what it's like. I went on one that had loads of ads on it, and so you're sat there where there's like the local radio ads playing, and the one that's got the drop-in centre kind of thing, you can go beforehand and have a look at it and see what it looks like and see how, you know, all that kind of stuff, just so that when it comes to it, if it's your first time going on a radio show, you know what to expect, you know where the place is, you know what it feels like, you know, all that kind of stuff. Just make yourself comfortable with it. During your actual interview, I would say just relax and enjoy it, and just have a chat with somebody, because realistically that's all it is just a chat with someone that loads of people are listening to, or well, some people, it depends on the size of the radio show. But yeah, just as I say, enjoy it. Make sure you've got your book at hand, or if you're watching this video and you're not an author-y type person, whatever it is that you're on there for, have it with you. I once forgot my book and had to run across town, well actually I made my husband run across town and go and get my book and drive it back, and actually as it turned out I didn't really need it, but anyway. And then my final tip really, once the interview's over, and they generally don't take very long, it goes quickly, and often you get an opportunity to chat to the presenter, not for masses of time, but often they might be playing some music or playing like a pre-recorded, like a the weather or something like that. So there might be a few minutes for you to chat to them and get to know them before you go on. Sometimes there's like a helper person who you can chat to as well and get to find out a bit more and kind of get comfortable with what you're doing. So that can be really nice. But yeah, just enjoy it. So the only other thing really to say is social media. So before you go on, advertise that you're going. Maybe say a week before, I'm going to be going to whatever, and please make sure that you have a listen. And then maybe the day before, and then maybe just before. Make sure you tune in. Take a picture of you in the place, radio, room, studio, and put it on Instagram. Look, I'm here. I'm ready to go. With your headphones on. Whatever it is that you want to do. To advertise that you're going to be there, so that as many of your kind of audience and followers will go along and listen to their radio show, because that's the point, isn't it? That they're going to get your people, you're going to get their people, all of that, cross-marketing kind of stuff. So make sure that you do that. And then when you've been on the show, make sure that you say, just left, and they were wonderful and I had a lovely time and all that kind of thing. And then once you get links for people to listen again, to make sure that you share that, so to say, or if you missed it, here's the link so you can listen again, or they're going to be replaying my interview at whatever time, please make sure that you tune in if you missed it the first time. All that kind of stuff, and encourage engagement for them and for yourself. It's as I say, after all, that's the whole point. And encourage them to share all of your stuff as well, and make sure that when you're talking about them you link them in, and then hopefully they will retweet or regram or whatever it is, repost your comments, and that they'll start talking about you as well, and then you get all of that great stuff going on. So that's all I really have to say. I really enjoyed being on local radio. I think it's it was a nice experience. I met some great people. It was really nice kind of before and after the interview to talk to the presenters a little bit and get to know them. It's always nice to meet people, and it was a fun experience, and definitely one I would do again. I mean, honestly, in terms of book sales, I don't know how beneficial it is. I don't know how many people that heard my interview would say, aha, I must buy her book. But at the end of the day, it's a nice experience to get to know people, because you never know who, however long down the line, you met somebody at that radio station and they say, oh, I was doing an interview and I met this woman and she'd written this book and I think you'd really like it. You never know what sales it may lead to in the end, or what opportunities it might present to you in the future, that somebody might recommend you to somebody. You just don't know. And it's really good practice anyway for being interviewed, and you never know, you might end up on national radio one day, or like local radio, but where it's not like a volunteer radio, like a regional radio type thing. You know what I mean? If you've been on local radio, then let me know. Let me know what your experience was like. Leave each other tips in the comments. Maybe you have a show. Maybe you do, you're a presenter. I don't know. And please leave me a comment if you used to make radio shows in your bedroom. But yeah, let me know in the comments if what your experiences are of being on the radio. Maybe you've been on bigger radio stations, and you can add some comments about what that's like. Anyway, please like if you did. Hopefully you found that useful, and please subscribe for more videos about writing and about reading, bookish things, other things. I'll see you all for my next one. Take care. Bye!